1 second. I have to put on my headphones. Sorry for the delay. Let's put this way. I think this goes this way and this way. Okay, so this is going to be the second video in the philosophy book series. Um, this time, other than this stack over here, which are the books that I recommended, most of the books that I recommended on my 30 books, analytic philosophy book recommendations. I have a bunch here on my bed that were on the other bookshelf, but they were not really organized. So, and then as I brought them over to my bed, I further disorganized them. So what I'm going to end up showing you is going to be out of order. So I'm not really going to know until I look at it. And yeah, so it's just going to be like a smorgasbord of philosophy books. All right, let's get started. I guess I'll get started over here. This book here I have is Nietzsche, The Gay Science. Um, this is a edited by Bernard Williams. Um, does that mean translated by Bernard Williams? It is translated by Knockoff. Josephine Knockoff. And this is from the Cambridge Text on the History of Philosophy. Another one from the same series of books. This is Human All Too Human. This one's translated by R.J. Hollingdale, famous. And there's an introduction by Richard Schacht, another Nietzsche scholar. Untimely Meditations. This is a Hollingdale translation with an introduction by J.P. Stern. Let's stick with Nietzsche. A Daybreak, another Cambridge University text series. This is edited by Maud Marie Clark and Brian Leiter, who I despise, and translated by Hollingdale. So Hollingdale's a good translator, by the way. He's probably one of my top two favorite translators. I like him and Kaufman. There are other very good translators depending on like which text, but more Nietzsche stuff. This is called The Mask of the Enlightenment by Stanley Rosen. But he has a good this is by the way, this is an interpretation of Thus Spoke Zarathustra. It's a good interpretation. It's a good yeah, you'll get new insights, I think. Let's stick with Nietzsche. Nietzsche's Epic of the Soul. Thus Spoke Zarathustra, T.K. Sung. Good stuff. T.K. Sung has good stuff. Um, More on Nietzsche. On the future of our educational institutions. Um, let's see. Translated and introduced by Michael W. Grenke. Grenke with the E ending. Grenke. Grenke. I don't know. Okay. More Nietzsche. Nietzsche's Task. An interpretation of Beyond Good and Evil by Lawrence Lampert. So, Beyond Good and Evil interpretation. So I have a Thus Spoke Zarathustra interpretation, a Beyond Good and Evil interpretation. Um, okay, more. Let's pull this one out. This is my first Nietzsche book. It's old, it's tattered, and this is the Walter Kaufman translation. This is the portable Nietzsche reader. Uh, I recommend Kaufman. Some people, yeah, don't like his interpretations, but I think they're pretty good. Um, this is Heirs to Dionysus, a Nietzschean current in literary modernism by John Burt Foster Jr. Um, I forget exactly uh what the contents are. Oh, okay. It's just like the effect of Nietzsche on literature, modern literature. More Cambridge text, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, edited by Adrian Del Caro. Adrian Del Caro is another very good Nietzsche translator. and Robert Pippin. I don't know too much about Robert Pippin as far as translations go, but this one is translated by Del Caro. Okay, these books are starting to stack up a little too high. More Nietzsche. I believe this is Kaufman. No, this is edited by Richard Schach again. Nietzsche genealogy, essays on Nietzsche's on the genealogy of morals. So now I have one on the genealogy of morals and interpretation, or essays actually on it. So kind of like an anthology, I would think. Um, yeah, there are a bunch of essays by like Philippa Foot, big name, Maud Marie Clark, big name, Arthur Danto, big name, Kathleen Higgins, big name, Richard White, big name. All of these are big names in Nietzsche scholarship. Okay, so more on Nietzsche. If you can't tell, I'm a big Nietzsche fan. This is the Cambridge Companion to Nietzsche, edited by Bernard Magnus and Kathleen Higgins. There's Higgins' name again. I'll start to put these over here. Let's see, another Nietzsche book. This is Curtis Cates' biography on Nietzsche. Um, okay, just another. It's just a biography. It's not really like Nietzsche. I have this little curio here. It's Nietzsche. Uh, Su musica. Is that Su musica? Su musica. Seine Musik. So yeah, it's actually he has a CD. So Nietzsche is a composer, right? He loved music, right? He said, the world, I think the world would be a mistake without music, or life would be a mistake without music. It's just a nice little curio I have. Let me put it here. More Nietzsche, The Gay Science, one of my earlier books. I read this. I used to take this to the job when I was working construction. I'd be sitting down reading The Gay Science, and people would give me the side eye, like, "What the hell are you reading?" Anyway, Walter Kaufman with a prelude and rhymes and the appendix of songs. I like this translation of The Gay Science. Um, okay, there must be more Nietzsche. There must be more Nietzsche stuff here, but oh, okay, I picked some up. Um, Another translation of the Genealogy of Morals. This is by Douglas Smith, the Oxford World Classics book. Good translation. These are starting to pile up pretty high here. Uh, The Will to Power, his posthumous book, edited by Walter Kaufman, translated by Kaufman and Hollingdale, so my two favorite translators. Although I do like Cato. What was his name? Yeah, I think that's his name. Okay. Another Human All Too Human translation. This is translated by Marion Faber with Stephen Lehman, and introduction and notes by Marion Faber. A new introduction by Arthur C. Danto. We've seen Danto's name already. One of my favorite books by Nietzsche, his autobiography, Ecce Homo. Here's the man, like the famous words by Pontius Pilate when he presented Jesus to the Jews. Like, here's who you were asking for. Anyway, so Ecce Homo, the great chapter titles, like why do I write like so great, or why am I so profound, things like that. Beyond Good and Evil, another one of my earlier Nietzsche books. Another Walter Kaufman translation. Good entryway into Nietzsche, I think, is Walter Kaufman. R.J. Hallingdale, too, also good. This is two books. This is The Birth of Tragedy and The Case of Wagner, Walter Kaufman translation. I think I have another copy somewhere, but I don't know where it is. Oh, I see another Nietzsche book. Um, this is Crane Brinton, Nietzsche, so just a general introduction. A new preface, epilogue, and biography of the author. Sorry, by the author, not of the author. Who wants to know about Crane Brinton? Oh yeah, so just Nietzsche. Um, oh, here's the book that I recommended. I'll put it on this pile, but I'll show it to you now. Plato's Five Dialogues. Good. If you're getting into analytic philosophy, this is like I would recommend. Like this is one of the top three books you should like take up. I'll stick this here. We'll review it again later. Um, More Nietzsche. This is one of the books that like analytic philosophers started publishing books on Nietzsche. I think this is one of them. Nietzsche and the Origin of Virtue by Lester Hunt. Can I put this here? Do I have more Nietzsche? I'm sure I do, but okay, for now, I'm not gonna hunt for the Nietzsche books. I'm just gonna go with what I have here. Oh, wait, speaking of, a very good interpretation of his Exe Homo. This is the commentary on Nietzsche's Exe Homo, Thomas Steinbuch. If you can get this book, I highly recommend it. Um, Here's another Nietzsche book. I'm out of focus. Why am I out of focus? What's going on? Hey, come back to focus. Why is my Logitech my Logitech suddenly out of focus? Oh, here we go. Back. Sorry about that. Okay, maybe I got too close. Okay, anyway, Friedrich Nietzsche, Beyond Good and Evil. So another Beyond Good and Evil. I think we had a Beyond Good and Evil. Actually, I don't remember. All right. What is this? It looks like a Nietzsche book, but I'm not sure. At this angle, I cannot tell. Let me just grab it. Ah, okay. The First Philosophers. Um, The Pre-Socratics and the Sophists, a new translation by Robin Waterfield. Robin Waterfield's a nice author, good writer. Um, let's take these four books and let's see. This is Volume 1, Part 2, Volume 2, Part 2, Volume 2, Part 1, Volume 1, Part 1. So I'll present them in the order. This is the famous Copleston History of Philosophy books. And these short volumes, I think the series goes up to something like 20 something. But I only have the first four. I picked these up on eBay for a decent price. And I intentionally only got like the first four because I didn't know, yeah, I didn't know like the content and whether I would like it. But I kind of like this history of philosophy. I'm not sure I'm going to collect the whole series. I think if I see like the rest at a very uh reasonable price on eBay, I might pick it up. But anyway, so I have the Copleston 4 here. This one is Volume 1, Part 1, Greece and Rome. Um, and it's just that. Then I have uh Greece and Rome, Volume 1, Part 2. Then we have Volume 2, Part 2, Medieval Philosophy. And oh, by the way, and the subtitle is Augustine to Bonaventure. And then part volume two, part two, medieval philosophy, Albert the Great to Duns Scotus, the Great Duns Scotus. Okay, so let's put this aside here. This is all going to topple over, I know. All right. More Friedrich Nietzsche, philosophical writings, edited by Reinhold Grimm and Caroline Molina Ivadia. Uh, this is the series, the German Library series. I have a couple of German Library Series books. Okay, I think now. Oh, since we were doing pre-Socratics, let's do Socrates. I have this little book here. It's very nice. Anthony Gottlieb, nice little book on Socrates. Let's stack it here. Um. Okay, now we're really gonna go. Oh no, let's kind of stick to ancient stuff here. I have Aristotle's Politics. Um. This is a Penguin's Classic. Translation by T.A. Sinclair. I can't really speak to this. I haven't read it. A book on perception. This is Howard Robinson, The Problems of Philosophy series by Routledge. Okay, I have this book. I can't really say too much about it. I've looked at it, but it was a long time ago. Like I don't even remember which essay or essays I read from that book. Another book from the Problems of Philosophy series by Routledge is Vagueness. Timothy Williams is a good philosopher. So if you're interested in vagueness, I recommend this book to you. Um, W.V. Quine, like when you get to Quine, you really got to know your symbolic logic. Like if you don't know your symbolic logic by the time you get to Quine, or by the time when you start studying Quine, you're really gonna have struggle through what he has to say. But obviously a huge name in 20th century philosophy. Um, this is Logic and Language. Is this Ayer? I don't know who this is by. Um, Anthony Flew, edited with introduction by Anthony Flew. So it's just an anthology. Let's see. By Anthony Flew, by Gilbert Ryle. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is a collection of essays in the philosophy of language. So it's got perennial stuff. Yeah, like decent book. Okay. More pre-Socratic stuff. The Pre-Socratic Philosophers, by Kirk and Raven. I remember liking this book. Although again, some of these books, like ancient philosophy, I studied a little bit a long time ago, like a long time ago. Every once in a while, I go back to it, especially the Pre-Socratics. But um, yeah, because they do a lot of the metaphysical questions that I like. So I find that they're still very instructive. The Pre-Socratics by Edward Hussey. You little hussy. Could be Husey, but I like Hussey better. Classical Life and Letters, Duckworth series, I guess. Introduction, the Milesians, Heraclitus, Pythagoras, and the Greek West, Parmenides and Zeno, the Age of Zopus. Yeah, it's typical stuff. Good stuff. Um, Speaking of not speaking of, I didn't speak of it. Last video I spoke of it. John McDowell is my favorite living philosopher. This is Tim Thornton on John McDowell, so he tries to help you get a grip of what McDowell is doing or saying, helpful stuff, because I have no idea. I mean, I do have some idea, but like it's hard. Um, G.E. Moore, big book on G.E. Moore, hardcover. I don't know how long I've had this book. This is edited by Paul Arthur and Shilp. No, I thought it was three names because they were all stacked, but it's one name. It's Paul Arthur Shilp. Yeah, so it's just an anthology of his work. Let's pull these books here. Mm, this is The Dehumanization of Art and Other Writings on Art and Culture by Ortega and Gasset. Or sorry, Ortega E. Gasset, not and Gasset. I'm reading the Y like it's and. Um, that name is very, very famous, but I honestly I have not read this book, but the name caught me, and at one point I was interested in like aesthetics and art. Not art, but aesthetics. Uh, The Philosophy of Existentialism by Gabriel Marcel, an exposition of the character of existential philosophy, including analysis of the theories of Jean-Paul Sartre. I am not an I kind of like existentialism. I'm not a big like believer. Oh, I take that back. I like a lot of what existentialists have to say and what they propose or yeah believe in. Friedrich Nietzsche, The Art of Tragedy, um, The Birth of Tragedy, not The Art of Tragedy. I recently read some of this again. This is translated by Sean Whiteside and edited by Michael Tanner. I thought Whiteside did a good job. Um, Another biography of another Nietzsche ex homo book. This is a Duncan Large translation, Oxford World Classic Series. I've seen a couple of these. This is the Penguins Classic Series of Nietzsche's, The Twilight of the Idols and the Antichrist. Um, Translated by R.J. Hollingdale. Introduction by Michael Tanner. There's that name again. Another Nietzsche book, another Penguins classic. This is Thus Spoke Zarathustra. This should be Hollingdale again. Um, yes, translated and introduction by R.J. Hollingdale. Okay, let's push these over here as they fall to the side. Let me grab the next set. Um, okay, again, kind of out of order. Um, this is Knowledge Mind and The Given. This is a famous phrase, The Given. Reading Wilfrid Sellars' Empiricism and the Philosophy of Mind, including a complete text of Sellars' essay by Willem A. de Vries and Tim Triplett. John McDowell is a big Wilfrid Sellars uh, proponent, so I thought I would start to read some Wilfrid Sellars, but I picked up the book, but honestly, I have not read any of it yet. Um, Informal logic. Um, Even if you're not into philosophy, like I think like you would do very well for yourself as far as thinking clearly if you studied a little bit of informal logic and the informal fallacies people tend to commit, or worse, well, maybe not worse yet, but the fallacies that are like used against you that you don't even notice. So, yeah. So this is a handbook of critical argumentation by Douglas and Walton. I'm not saying this book is particularly the one you need to get, but anything with informal logic, I think would do you well. The Possible and the Actual, Readings in the Metaphysics of Modality, edited by Michael Liu. Michael Liu's a good metaphysician. That sounds better. Michael Dummett, Big Name, Truth and the Past. Truth, Meaning, Time. Sense and Sensibilia. Um, I always get this confused with the other book, the fiction book, like Sense and something. Anyway, or something insensible. Anyway, this is J.L. Austin, Big Name, and reconstructed from the manuscripts by G.J. Warnock. I have this. I bought this used. It has writing in it, but okay. I'm okay with it. Uh, this is Spinoza. This is the Wadsworth series books, the little books that kind of help you like break the ice. Kind of, I don't know, that's not a good expression to use, but just to help you to understand Spinoza if you kind of like lost from the beginning. Yeah, these help. Thomas Nagel, Big Name in Philosophy, The Last Word of this book. The empiricists like Locke, Berkeley, and Hume, pronounced Barkley, not Berkeley, Barkley. Uh, okay, I have this book. More stuff. Pragmatist, William James. Essays in Radical Empiricism, introduction by Ellen Cappy Suckiel, preface by Ralph Barton Perry. I don't know who these people are. Um, Leibniz, Basic Writings, Discourse on Metaphysics, correspondence with Arnaud, Arnaud, he's French. Monadology, with Arnaud Monadology. I don't know what, like, I'm reading here. This book was 95 cents when it was new. As you can see, it's a super old book. Eugene Freeman, editor, San Jose State College. Okay, San Jose. David Hume. I am not a big fan of Hume or any of the like empiricists. Like I struggle to read them and kind of puts me off. The Inquiry Concerning Human Understanding, edited with an introduction by by Charles W. Hendel. Um, famous book, big time book. Hume is obviously a big name in philosophy. I don't have to tell you that, I think. John R. Searle, Mind, Language, and Society. So these are the three things he's talking about here. Searle's a huge name in philosophy. He's philosophy of mind still. Um, but he also says that probably we're not going to make any gains in philosophy of mind until we just learn more about the brain. He's the one. He's famous for his the Chinese room like scenario or dilemma or problem. Anyway, Medieval Logic, an outline of its developments from 1250 to 1400 by Philotheus Boner. No jokes. Consciousness, William Lycan. William Lycan also has, I think, an anthology for philosophy of language stuff. So, and Lycan's a good philosopher, by the way. So, if you want to get into if you're interested in consciousness, this would be a pretty good book for you. Um, Nicholas Rescher. I forget what kind of philosophical views Rescher espoused. It's not the normal stuff, but he's a good philosopher. So this is philosophical reasoning. Like it's very broad, right? And it's very like meta. How to reason, like when it comes to philosophy, how do we go about doing philosophy? What kind of like inferences we make? What kind of like arguments we should make, and like lots of stuff. That's not very eloquent description, but okay. Um, Another Rescher book, Objectivity. The Obligations of Impersonal Reason. So this is the second book on just like reasoning in general. He has a lot of interesting things to say. You might not like end up espousing what he espouses, but yeah, you have to take him seriously. He's just too good at philosophy, and he has a lot of common sense things to say. Okay, but you don't have to follow him through all the way to his conclusions every time, I think. The semantic tradition from Kant to Carnap to the Vienna station, which is an allusion to the Vienna Circle. Um, Kant is probably the biggest name in philosophy, like top three biggest names in philosophy, but I don't read Kant that much. I probably should. I might start to read him more, but yeah, I don't. And then Carnap, kind of like Quine, you really have to know your symbolic logic if you're going to start to read somebody like Carnap. Okay. I have this interesting book here on if you're interested in Stoicism. Um, Ward Farnsworth, what he's done, he has culled famous and not so famous quotations from various Stoics, and he's used it to support his explanation of what Stoicism is. So he'd say like Stoics believe this, and then he'll give you a quote from a famous Stoic or not so famous Stoic, but a Stoic that supports that, and he expounds a little bit on the quote. And so instead of just like reading like Marcus Aurelius and trying to understand Stoicism that way, you this book is a little bit more. I think it's more. It's like it's just a more interesting read to me. So it's a good book if you're interested in Stoicism a little bit. Like I recommend this book to you. Okay. New issues in epistemological disjunctivism. When I was entertaining the thought, not entertaining the thought. Oh, I when after well in my senior year when I was gonna my senior year before I graduated like from my undergraduate program at UCLA. I was going to apply to PhD schools because one, I graduated from UCLA, two, I had a good GPA, and three, I was going to have all the letters of recommendation that I needed. And I was going to get into a good school, like just judging from my classmates and so anyway, and their GPAs and their abilities. Anyway, so I chose disjunctivism as my topic, but I never ended up writing that paper, and I kind of suffered from the perfectionist um perfectionist suffer from where nothing is quite right and then you just get writer's block. But I also came to the realization that I didn't want to do philosophy for a living. I had burnt out pretty badly my final like quarter there, and I took a year off, and then I was never that serious or passionate about doing it for a living. I still love philosophy. Every once in a while, I do philosophy. Every rare once in a while, I do it rigorously. And this is kind of the point of this channel is to kind of hopefully to like inspire me to put out more rigorous work in philosophy because this is going to sound a little uh, arrogant, but like if you're good at anything, if you're talented at something, or if whatever it is you're strongest at, like it would be a shame if you didn't do that thing. And I think that if I'm good at anything, like of all the things that I can do, the thing that I do best is philosophy. And for me not to write philosophy or for me not to read philosophy and to write philosophy papers, I think is kind of would be a shame. So yeah, that's kind of like part of the reason why I made this channel. Hopefully this will, yeah, inspire me to do some serious work in philosophy after many, many, many years of not doing anything. The Enlightenment, the rise of modern paganism. This says winner of the 1967 National Book Award, old book by Peter Gay. Okay, I don't know too much about the content. Okay, and let me show you another book series. Remember, I showed you the Copplestone history, but it was incomplete. It was only 4 books of like 20. These are 4 books, but it's a complete series. And this is by Anthony Kenny, a big name in philosophy. Big name in philosophy. This is volume 4, volume 3, volume 2, volume 1. So I'll show you in order. This is volume 1, Ancient Philosophy, Anthony Kenny. This is volume two. Volume two, Medieval Philosophy. Volume three, The Rise of Modern Philosophy. Cover. And volume four, Philosophy in the Modern World. When you see the phrase modern philosophy, don't necessarily assume they're talking about like 21st century or even late 20th century. Modern philosophy is like earlier back. Modern philosophy can be like 17th century, 16th century, 16th century, maybe 17th century. Yeah. So okay. So that four book series is a good series. Anthony Kenny is a good philosopher. John McDowell, Mind, Value, and Reality, one of his more famous books. One even more famous, I think, is Meaning, Knowledge, and Reality. Heady stuff. I do not recommend this to you. If you are new to philosophy, I don't recommend it to you. If you are an undergraduate in philosophy, I don't necessarily recommend it to you. I'm not saying you can't tackle it and you can't understand a lot of it, but yeah, you're biting off a lot. Like I don't know why you do that unless you particularly like McDowell's views. Um, Readings for logical analysis. This is Stephen R.C. Hicks and David Kelly. Um, I'm not exactly sure what this is. Is this a logic book or is this like a critical thinking book? Oh no, these guys have opinions. Listen to some of these uh, essay titles. The Case for Torture. Torture. O.J. Simpson was guilty. O.J. Simpson was not guilty. The Border Case. So these are just people's like opinion, like if you go to the like newspaper, like nobody does anymore, but like the opinion section. So these are people's like, yeah, arguments for some topic, some thesis, and then they're gonna show you, I think, how to scrutinize those arguments. Okay, good stuff if you're learning critical thinking. Again, William James, Pragmatism and the Meaning of Truth. Introduction by A.J. Ayer, big name. Um, Marxist Theory of Alienation by Istvan Mezzaros, which I don't know where he's from. I don't recognize uh, these diametric marks. Like I don't know what country he's from. It doesn't matter, but anyway. Yeah, I have this. I haven't read this Marx stuff. More on existentialism. This is by Marjorie Green. Um, I don't know who that's supposed to be. Uh, okay. Another Thomas Nagel book, The View from Nowhere. Some good essays. Uh, I know I've read a few of these essays. Let me see which ones jump out at me as far as their names go. Um, he's got an essay on Kripke. He's got an essay on other minds. Um, that's mind and stuff. Yeah, he's got essays on all kinds of topics. Right, he's got essays on knowledge. He's got essays on thought and reality, on freedom, on value, on ethics. Yeah, Nagel was a big time philosopher back in his day. Uh, this is one of the books when I did 1 year of a master's program, and this is one of the books for the class. Moral Psychology. This is volume two, The Cognitive Science of Morality, Intuition, and Diversity. I'm not a fan of this kind of book for ethics, but I had to buy it. Big name in ancient Miles Burney, big name, the Theaetetus of Plato, translation by M.J. Lewis. I don't think Burney a philosopher as much as a historian, but he does such a good job on Plato that like it's worth the read. Uh, a House Divided, comparing analytic and continental philosophy. There's a famous divide in philosophy. It's kind of like it's not really like a hard divide. It's kind of like a fuzzy divide, but anyway, between analytic school and continental school. And this book kind of talks about that. I didn't really buy this for myself. I bought this for a coworker of mine, but I ended up just like printing out the few pages really that she wanted, and then I kept the book because David Hume, um, a treatise of human nature, super popular book. I do not like Hume. I have not read this book. The number system, H.A. Thurston. This is not really philosophy, but kinda, but not really. Okay. A profile of of mathematical logic by Howard DeLong. So this is obviously philosophy. Mathematical logic. I can't remember how much of this book I read or if I read any of it. I think I had like, I think my interest peaked and then waned really quickly after I bought this book, which is just tends to happen. Carnap, like I said, to understand somebody like Carnap, you're gonna need to bone up on your symbolic logic, and I hadn't, so I bought this book to help me out. Another, Thomas Nagel book, Mortal Questions, big time name. Stoic, Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, his most famous work, very good work. This is a new translation by, and I think I remember liking what I was reading. Gregory Hayes. Yeah, so I recommend this translation, this book. Um, a little curio of Frege's notations. Nobody uses Frege's notations for logic. It's cumbersome. It's kind of like unintuitive. It's just been refined to like, yeah, it's much better now when you study modern symbolic logic. But if you have a particular interest in Frege, uh, like you're a Frege scholar, or you just have a special interest in how he set up his notation system for his logic, this book explains it to you. Gregory Landini. I have this more as a curio than I'm never gonna really want to learn how Frege, how Frege did his logic. This is kind of one of those Cliff Notes books, Meditations on First Philosophy. Um, right, Rene Descartes. So, or is this the whole thing? Uh, no, it's just, yeah. It's first meditation, second meditation, third meditation. This looks way too thin to be all the meditations, but okay, I have this book. This looks like Lucretius. No, on man in the universe. This is Aristotle. This is an old, um, I forget what the library of. No, this is a Classics Club book. Um, yeah, metaphysics, parts of animals, ethics, politics, and poetics. Edited with an introduction by Louise Ropes Loomis. Is it Louise? I think it's Louise. Okay. I have this anthology, Ancient Greek Philosophy. This was one of my books at UCLA for the seminar on ancient Greek. We had three blocks. We had three seminar classes, one for ancient, one for medieval, and one for modern. And this was the ancient one. I think I got like an A minus in this class. Uh, from Thales to Aristotle. Anyway, um, book on Frege by Michael Dummett. I have not read this book. I tend to not to like. I prefer to tackle Frege on my own, and Russell on my own, and Wittgenstein on my own, with the exception of the Tractatus. After I do my primary readings on my own and think about it, I might go to a secondary source to see if like there's just things I overlooked. There's gonna be things I overlooked or maybe things I misunderstood. But this book, I thought I would like read it. I might end up cherry picking an article or two, but I can't see myself reading through this to get Dummett's take on Frege. Like I I may be a little arrogant, but I don't need Dummett to tell me what Frege thought. Um, Moral Psychology. This is the other one. This is the volume one, the volume three actually from that same ethics class. The Neuroscience of Morality, Emotion, Brain Disorders, and Development, edited by Walter Sinnott Armstrong, double T, or otherwise I would have said Sino, but I think it's Sinnott. I'm not a Eastern philosopher. Lao Tzu, Tao Te Ching. This is just a famous, popular book, so I have it. I've read it, I think. It's been so long. In the Art of War, I've read. Existentialism versus Marxism. Yeah. Conflicting Views on Humanism, edited with an introduction by George Novak. Book cover price is $2.95. Okay. I have this. I won't comment on it. Eric Vogelin, The New Science of Politics, an introduction, with a new foreword by Dante Germino. Okay. No comments. I have this book, Critique of Practical Reason, Immanuel Kant, translated by T.K. Abbott. The Critique of Reason is super popular. Speaking of, I have Hume here, Wadsworth book. Oh, some Nietzsche books. Let me put them, at least the three that look like they belong together. I'll put them in order. So this is this the Stanford publisher one? I think Stanford, is it Stanford? Give me 1 second. Yeah, yeah. Stanford University Press put out a series of books like yay big on Nietzsche, like his corpus. This is Human All Too Human. This is book one, so book two is right here. This is book two, but it's book four in the series. And the first one is translated by Gary Handwork, and also the second one. Okay, which makes sense. And then I have book number eight, which is Beyond Good and Evil and on the Genealogy of Morals. And this is by Adrian Del Caro, who I already mentioned before, and I said it was a good translator of Nietzsche. Let me put this aside here. Let's grab this little stack. More on Nietzsche. Um, this is Jenset von Gut und Busse. I don't know how to pronounce the O, the umlaut in German. I think this is so this is Beyond Good and Evil. I think this is the German and English side by side translation. Yes. So if you're learning German, you might want to do that. Stanley Rosen. The only reason I have Stanley Rosen, the only reason I read Stanley Rosen is because he's an interpreter and scholar of Nietzsche. And in this book, there was really only one article that I wanted and I picked and that I read. I forget what it's got, but remember he has an interpretation of "Thus Spoke Zarathustra," and where is it? Am I going to find it? Probably not because I'm on camera. Oh, here we go. Go Nietzsche's Image of Chaos. Um, yeah, that's one of the essays. So, mm, okay. So Rosen is a nice philosopher. He's not well known, but I like what he has to say, and I like the way he writes. Nietzsche, Another Interpretation, an analysis of Beyond Good and Evil by Douglas Burnham. More Nietzsche stuff. I love me some Nietzsche. Nietzsche and metaphysics. This is again when analytic philosophers started publishing books on Nietzsche. This is by Peter Polner. Okay. I have two more stacks. Sorry, I'm gonna have to lean forward and kind of like. Okay, let's start with these two kind of oddballs because one is the philosophy of set theory, and the other one is naive set theory. Um, Mary Tiles, a historical introduction to Cantor's Paradise. Right now, I cannot read this and understand it. And naive set theory is not so hard to understand, but I'd have to read this slowly. Uh, anyway, Paul R. Halmos. I have these two books. I have this little helpful book, The Philosopher's Toolkit. Um, if you've never done analytic philosophy, like I hadn't when I got to university, well, to UCLA, I went to City College and then I transferred. Before I went to City College, I read a ton of Nietzsche, a lot of Nietzsche. Not like I have a ton of books now, but and I've done a ton of reading. But before I even got to City College, my entryway to philosophy was Nietzsche, and I'd read like I'd went through a lot of the Portable Nietzsche Reader. I'd I'd gone through most of the Gain Science, the genealogy of morals, Beyond Good and Evil, Human All Too Human, Untimely Meditations. Um, did I mention the Gain Science? Yes. The Will to Power. So I'd read a lot. I'd read a lot of Nietzsche. And then when I went to UCLA, and by the way, everything. So when I went to my city college, like none of that helped me. We didn't do any Nietzsche at city college, but the stuff that we did in city college, like I thought like I got good grades in my philosophy classes at City College, like anybody can. But that didn't prepare me for UCLA. Like it's just a whole different animal when you go to a school like UCLA, which is like a big time analytic department, and they ask you to write philosophy papers. And at that time, they had no class that showed their undergraduates how to write philosophy papers. You kind of had to like learn on the fly. And yeah, my GPA took a hit. My first 2 quarters at UCLA were rough. Rough, not in like when I say rough, I don't mean like I was like a B student. I was like a 3.3 GPA student. I was like a B plus student. But when you are aspiring to go to PhD programs, when you're aspiring to get into like one of the better PhD programs, top 20 in the nation, getting your scholarship, getting like almost like getting a scholarship to go there and like incurring no debt. Like you want to graduate at the top of your class from your undergraduate school in a big name school like UCLA. So 3.3, I was really disappointed. But it was because partly it was because I just like I didn't know how to write the papers they wanted me to write. And it took me like a lot of like trial and error or like learning on, on the job training to finally figure it out. By the time I finished my first year, I figured it out. I figured out, okay, I know how to format my papers. I know what to include, what to exclude, and my writing got better. So, but that took that year to do. Anyway, a lot of the tools that like I learned along the way, they're in here. Like the de dicto distinction, the use mention distinction, and just other like philosophical tools like informal fallacies, and things like that are in here. So it's kind of like a reference book for yeah for philosophers. Um, Again, when I told you when I was going to write my applications for PhD programs, I was going to write on disjunctivism. This is on epistemological disjunctivism. There's also metaphysical disjunctivism, but it's the same rough idea. Um, okay, I have this book, which I must have just picked up at a used bookstore for cheap. Christian Political Theology, a Marxian guide. I'm not a Marxist. I am the antithesis of a Marxist. Joseph Petula or Petula. The theology and of the early Greek philosophers. This is the Gifford Lectures by Werner Jaeger. Or yeah, okay, I have this book. Let me stack this over here. The Logical Structure of the World and the Pseudo Problems in Philosophy by Rudolf Carnap, edited by Rolf A. George. Um, I have this book here if you're interested in Aquinas' thought and his Summa. This is a nice little concise version. It's called the Shorter Summa. Summa. It's not posthumous. So it's not like some people took the Summa and just, excised a bunch of things out of it. No, Aquinas approved this Summa. So so St. Thomas Aquinas' own concise version of his Summa Theologica. Um, I forget who translated this. Um, what? It has no translator? I don't see the name. Oh, dedicated by the author to Brother Reginald and his friend and companion, and by the translator to his mother and father. Yeah, but I don't see their names. Who are these translators and authors? The author is Thomas Aquinas, but who's the translator? Okay, I don't know. Anyway, uh, um, sometimes I go outside of philosophy to get some like foundation before I start. doing philosophical stuff. So I think like if you study like if you study the mind or the brain, you might have a solid foundation into now going into philosophy of mind. If you do mathematics, same thing with philosophy of logic, I think. And just learning about the brief history of time, like this book, it is not philosophy per se, but it gives you a nice solid footing if you want to study like theories of time or theories of infinity and things like that. So I picked that up. Okay, let me grab the last stack here. I believe it is the last stack. Yes. Uh, okay, I have these two books. I'll show them together because they're the set. Volume one and volume one and volume two. Um, The Principles of Ethics. This is Herbert Spencer. Introduction by Tibor Machan. Volume one and volume two. Spencer is not read anymore. And then I also have this book, Major Conservative and Libertarian Thinkers, edited by John Meadowcroft, Herbert Spencer. So Herbert Spencer is more of a political thinker, but since he wrote books with the title of ethics, like I grouped it here, because ethics is philosophy. I have a bookmark on page 30, but how many years ago was that? So let's start over if I have to start over. The Dream of the Enlightenment. This is by Anthony Gottlieb. There was another book that Anthony Gottlieb did that kind of is a companion to this. They're both excellent. He's a great writer. The Rise of Modern Philosophy. I forget what the other Gottlieb book was, but this is a good book. And the last two books here, I have Quine, Logician, big time name. You got to know your you got to know your symbolic logic. And my my hero, Ludwig Wittgenstein. Philosophical Investigations. This is before the 50th anniversary. This is the reissued German English edition. So yeah, side by side. I never bother with the German because I'm not trying to learn German. Um, this is Anscombe. I think Anscombe's the only one that does the translation of the investigations. She is his intellectual executor, I do believe. Okay, that's it. Those are all the books that I have on the second bookshelf. And so this will be um, part two of I originally named the other one part one of four. This might just be part two of three because I'm thinking that I have maybe one or two boxes somewhere here. I have to go through them with philosophy books. And I know I have more boxes in storage. So I might keep this a four-part series. I'll dig out whatever I have left in this room, but it's going to take me a little time to find it. And then I can't promise the books in storage one because it's just too much, and I would have to dig them all out to make sure that I don't have some buried way in the back. All right, but that's it. So, all right, that was the second installment here, and oh, I almost forgot. I'll show you the books from my 30 recommendations that I have here. So this was book number one. I don't remember the order. Plato's Five Dialogues. Highly recommend it if you're getting into uh, analytic philosophy. Avram Stroll, great author, 20th century philosophy. Recommend. All these are recommended. All of these are recommended. With a caveat, and I'll talk about that when I get to the metaphysics stuff. This is just an introduction to critical thinking, informal fallacies, and some logical, like kind of like logical tools again. A to Z of critical thinking by Beth Black. I think she's just an editor. She's not the author. Um, mm, let's grab more. Michael Beanie. If you want to read Frege and you don't read the German, like this is a great way to go. It has most of his stuff and it's good translations. Given that I don't speak German, I just have another copy of this because I bought it for one of my students, which I'm hoping to get her to be a little bit more critical in her thinking. Bertrand Russell, Our Knowledge of the External World. There's one essay in here called On Our Knowledge of the External World, which I recommend, especially new to philosophy. This is from the section that I called Meta, Ethics. This is Counterfactuals. David Lewis. David Lewis was like a genius, like a big time name in philosophy when he was alive. He died way too early. He also espoused possible world semantics. He had a possibilistic view where he thought they had their own realities, and that kind of means something different than if they were just like an abstract tool. Anyway, I don't know too much about it, but anyway, there's just a distinction that like he argued for, which was not popular, but he was a persuasive philosopher. So anyway, good stuff. Counterfactuals, a little bit on possible world semantics here, a little bit. It's good stuff. Um, Recommended readings. Let me grab a few. Don't fall down. Okay, don't slip out of my hand. Um, Other than Plato's Five Dialogues, Meditations. This is Descartes. This is Cottingham, uh, editor. As you can see, this is the Cambridge text in the philosophy and history of philosophy series. Descartes. Um, Symbolic Logic. This book by David Kern is okay. It's not great. It's not bad. Like it's not bad at least. Like and really, you just want to avoid when it comes to philosophy. When it comes to symbolic logic, there are various ways that people teach symbolic logic. There are various symbols that people teach for that people use. And there are various methods that people teach how to do the derivations. Um, and some are more intuitive than others. Some some have a good way of teaching the inference rules and the derivations, and some have a good way of symbolizing. And yeah, so you kind of pick and choose. But so that's not a bad way. That's not a bad way. I don't have my texts, my philosophy, my logic textbooks like Kalish and Montague's the one we used at UCLA. I wouldn't tackle that on my own, but it's a good logic book. If you can like if you can work your way through the first chapter or two and understand, then you're on your way. But the first chapter or two might be the ones that like just like sink you. So there are more user-friendly books than Kalish and Montague. Anyway, so this book on epistemology, 50 puzzles, paradoxes, Sorites, thought experiments, a good way to start getting into analytic philosophy. Perennial problem, commonly referred to as the problem of universals. This is Armstrong. Armstrong is an excellent writer, excellent philosopher, and his opinionated introduction. Good stuff. Very good stuff. Very like Welcome to Philosophy book, Philosophy Made Simple by Popkin and Stroll. Popkin and Stroll are both very good authors. Stroll especially to me, but when they do a work together, when they collaborate to do something, I've yet to find a poorly written book by them. They're almost always excellent. Okay, so let's put this over here. Uh-huh. I forgot it's 30 books that are recommended. I don't think I have all 30 here. I think I have like 27 or 28 of them. Um, this is the one that I put in the metaphysics one. This is not for an introduction for people getting into analytic philosophy, but this is analytic philosophy stuff. Properties and Propositions: The Metaphysics of Higher Order Logic by Robert Truman. Okay, it is what it is. If you don't know what it is, don't buy it. Introduction to Philosophy, P.F. Strawson, huge name in philosophy. Analysis and Metaphysics, an introduction to philosophy. Another Origins of Analytic Philosophy. So I like the history of philosophy. So this is Michael Dummett on the origins of analytic philosophy. Dummett's a huge name. Turing's Vision, right? Alan Turing. The Birth of the Computer Science by Christopher Bernhardt of Computer Science, not philosophy guy, I think, but you don't need to be to understand Turing's article and contribution. Understanding Human Knowledge. Stroud, what was his name? Barry Stroud is to me like as good as Thomas Nagel was. Like he was a big name and good writer, good author, and this is an interesting book. This is metaphysics. Sorry, this is metalogic. Metalogic. It's like our thoughts on logic, right? Okay. An introduction to the Meta Theory of Standard First Order Logic by Jeffrey Hunter. Kind of heady stuff. Not super heady, but like first do logic and then do this. I would recommend that order. It's not necessary, but like I think it's just more palatable uh, that way. A book on logic, another book on logic that does a fine job. Logic and Philosophy. This is the Houseman Kahane Tidman. This is the, what edition is this? 10th edition. I saw on Amazon there is now the 13th edition. And I don't even know what the price was, but I remember I would not have bought it for that price. Like, get older editions, especially with philosophy books. You don't really need newer editions for philosophy books. Get like the oldest you can, as long as they're in like very good condition. I think they'll serve, like, yeah, they'll serve your purpose. Knowledge, Reality, and Value. This is an introduction to philosophy. Most a mostly common sense guide to philosophy. Mockle humor. This was recommended on Amazon. I got this like relatively recently, within the last year. Um, it's pretty good. It's pretty good, but like I have a ton of good introduction to philosophy books, but this is not bad. So like if you pick this up, I think, especially if you're new, like yeah, it'll be useful to you. Um, five more books. This old book here, mm, this is by not Thomas Nagel, but Ernest Nagel, which was a big name also in philosophy back in the day. And Morris R. Cohen. I don't know about Cohen so much, but his name is before Nagel's. But anyway, um, this is book on logic, and I like some of their explanations. So some of the chapters I like, but I have not read the whole book because who the hell does that? Um, Kenneth Taylor, big name in philosophy. Truth and Meaning, an introduction to the philosophy of language, my favorite subfield in philosophy, philosophy of language. Taylor's a good philosopher. Scott Soames also puts out good books. Um, Martin Nitsch has an anthology. Here's the other book on Descartes' Meditations. This is volume two, by the way. The philosophical writings of Descartes, volume two. Don't get volume one. You don't need volume one. Get volume two. And this is again translated by Cottingham, but also Stuthoff and Murdoch. Okay. And last two, even though I'm not a big fan of possible world semantics, you got to kind of know it. Especially if you want to be like, if you want to be an analytic philosopher, if you're going to an analytic school, you probably don't need to learn possible world semantics, but I think eventually, like if you're going to do master's work or PhD work, depending on your subfields of specialties, you're going to want to know, I think, possible world semantics, and this is a good book for it. This is by Bradley and Stewart's. No, Bradley and Swartz. A Possible World, an introduction to logic and its philosophy. Possible world semantics is used a lot to talk about to explain our modal propositions and hypothetical statements, things like that. And finally, this book in philosophy of language, it's although it's called Readings in Semantics, so it's probably a book in linguistics, but it's got like the major essays in the philosophy of language in the 20th century. You'll find Frege's essays in here, Getty's essays, Russell's essays, Rilke's essays, Grice's essays, P.F. Strawson's essays. Um, yeah, so and this is like you can also get the Martinich anthology, but that's going to be much more expensive. That's like I saw it I think for $100, the new edition. Um, which I would love if somebody gifted it to me, but I'm not going to buy it. I actually have the Martinich somewhere, so I know I have more books in storage. And but this book covers like yeah, it's got Quine, it's got Linsky, Frege, Strawson, Ryle, Ayer, Hempel, Carl Hempel, Carnap, uh, Fire, Fay, Feyerabend. I know the name, but I can't pronounce his name. J.L. Austin. Yeah, it's just got all the huge names in the history of like philosophy of language. So that's it. Those are the books. Um, all right, now I'm officially done. Okay, later, guys. I won't. So I'm gonna click, and you're gonna see my big head, and then I'm gonna click off.